Welcome to Entry Point Faith, where every week we discover fresh meaning in the world so you can find faith your way. Today's message is titled No Shortcuts and is presented by Betty Ellison.
Not taking shortcuts made me think about what might happen when we are going to have to give a book report and we haven't read the entire book. So we are likely to face a lot of things like missing out on some important insights. We've also missed an opportunity to think more deeply about our subject, and most of all, learn something new. And of course, we end up maybe getting a not so desirable grade for that report. I read daily devotions from a book called Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. And one that I thought was especially relevant to this subject was I should say that Jesus talks directly to the reader in this book. And in this one, he asks us to trust him when we are in the midst of troublesome, quote, troublesome situations. He says that it is during those times that the peace such situations can produce far outweighs the trials we endure. Would you please pray with me? Oh God, as human beings, I think we have a built-in tendency to look for ways to make things easier for ourselves. Thus, we look for shortcuts in many areas of our lives, especially when we are hit with those troublesome situations. Life does indeed present hardships and pain at times. When that happens, instead of looking for a shortcut, may we look to you, O Lord, for the guidance and support only you can give. We also want answers, though we know we will not always get these. Sometimes there are simply no workable shortcuts. So we ask you, God, to give us the strength and patience to deal with whatever life throws at us. Help us to count our blessings even as we are in turmoil or pain. But most important, Lord, help us to remember that you are right there by our side, watching over us, listening to our concerns, comforting us. Once we feel the peace you offer, we will experience more calm and be able to work through our painful situation. Today we also pray for the people of Ukraine as their country and their lives are being turned upside down. Please comfort them, Lord, as they go through this horrible war. We also lift up to you any concerns on the hearts and minds of this congregation. Thank you, God, for loving us. Amen.
Today, we are actually talking about not taking shortcuts. So, knowing she was going to have surgery, Nancy recently asked me if I had any messages in my head to share with all of you. I did, in fact, have an idea, but I hadn't really dedicated any time to think about it or even commit to it on paper. A few days later, I watched a TV show called This Is Us. And the only way I can describe it is that it was a wink from God. Because exactly what was happening in that show was what I was trying to figure out how to tell you guys. It was in my head, maybe my heart. But before we get to that, let me share some stories. So the memories of what I learned in high school are fading fast. The Pythagorean theorem has come in handy a few times. Do you guys remember that? Yeah? So has that equation for solving problems when you solve for x when you know the other three values. That comes in handy every once in a while. So to know my math skills are a little more like this. Thank you. There are a few things that I remember specifically about Madeline Thompson's third period literature class during my junior year in high school. There was a really smart girl named Maureen who sat in the front row. She was very pregnant, and it was the first time I'd ever seen someone my age pregnant. I don't think I'd even gone on a real date yet. A pretty severe case of acne guaranteed I would not get pregnant during my high school. Secondly, I remember Mrs. Thompson herself. She was very tall and proper, and she reminded me of a character out of the Victorian period, except she wore clothes from the early 1960s, and this was the late 1970s. If the class was talking, in order to get their attention, she would say, "If you're talking, please stop." I remember it being extremely effective. The class got quiet immediately. There have been a lot of times in my adult life that I've wanted to try that, but I don't think I can pull it off like she did. Lastly, because it was a literature class, I remember learning how important conflict is to a book or a story. So let me give you the formal definition of conflict in literature. A conflict is a literary device characterized by a struggle between two opposing forces. Conflict provides crucial tension in any story and is used to drive the narrative forward. It is often used to reveal a deeper meaning in a narrative while highlighting characters' motivations, values, and weaknesses. In Chicken Little, the conflict is that Chicken Little thought the sky was falling. In Little Red Riding Hood, there was that darn wolf. In The Velveteen Rabbit, the rabbit was once a well-loved toy that became a worn-out and discarded nursery object. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. Did they pay royalties on that one? Toy Story, I don't know. The problem is that while I don't mind a little bit of respectful conflict between friends, I'm always so disappointed when the conflict appears in a story, whether it is a book, a movie, or a TV show. I want happiness, and not a struggle between two opposing forces. I don't want crucial tension. I want the characters that I've grown to love to live happily ever after. So this is how bad it is. Whenever I would watch Law & Order SVU with my kids, I would pretty much know that the guest star was guilty. If you ever watch Law, you can guess it. So my kids don't watch network TV. So that person would appear and I said, "That's the one." And they'd go, "How do you know?" I go, "I just got a feeling." And they had no idea, because they have no idea who guest stars are, because they don't watch TV. So this had two good things about it. One is I was always right, which is good to be right with your kids. The other is I would know who not to get attached to, because I didn't want to get attached to a character that later would be a bad guy. In a recent episode of This Is Us, they told the story of a dance teacher whose goal is to support and encourage dance students who otherwise would fall through the cracks and not have opportunities. One of the students is Stacy, who I grew to love and root for in this episode. My own dislike of conflict is not limited to stories, movies, or television. I want to take a shortcut and fast forward through all the bad parts of life as well, whether it be my own hard times or the challenges that I see others go through. When your children need to suffer the consequences of poor choices. When a friend or family member has a challenging diagnosis, or when a couple decides to end their marriage. It's so difficult to experience yourself or watch others go through. Right now, my oldest son is experiencing his first big financial challenge since living on his own. The housing crisis, combined with inflation, has caused his rent to go up much faster than his income. On top of that, he has gas prices and he has food. Mama Bear desperately wants to sweep in and make everything right by giving him money or taking care of him. But that's not going to help him. Whether it's your kids, your family, or me, or a character on a TV show, getting through the challenging times is tough. By this time of the show, I'm emotionally invested. I had just spent the last 30 minutes getting to know this young dancer and rooting for her success. And then she fell and didn't get up. I was devastated. So I did what any 21st century television viewer would do. Since the show was recorded, I fast forwarded. I took a shortcut until she was standing up again. It did seem like a really long time, but I was really thankful I didn't have to deal with that crucial tension. Over the past 6 seasons, I've grown to love every character on the show, and I just want everything to be good. So I watched for a few more minutes, and then I realized I may have missed something important. So I put on my big girl pants, I got back to the fall, and then I watched it all the way through. I surprise you that when I saw Stacy and Beth on that stage, the tears were flowing. That was the most important moment of the entire show. The conflict revealed both strength and resilience in Beth. She had that strength because of the conflicts in her own life, and she didn't hide from them. She embraced them and used them in a way that made a difference to others, including her own daughters who were in that audience. The conflicts in our own personal stories are extremely difficult. It would be amazing if we could fast forward through them and just get on with our lives. But I've come to learn that just like the conflict in the book makes the book interesting, the conflict in our lives makes us better friends, better people, and yeah, a little bit more interesting as well. If we fast forwarded through the challenging parts of our lives, we would lose out on the opportunity to learn, to become resilient, and to become the best versions of ourselves. The parts of my life that I wanted to fast forward through are the times when I learned so much. Patience, compassion, empathy. Now some of you know that I'm a part-time fitness coach. I coach at a women's boot camp. It's focused on strength training. When you do strength training, when you work a muscle against a resistance, it becomes stronger, especially if it has time to recover. Do this regularly and you will significantly increase your strength. Interestingly, they still don't know the mechanism of how we get stronger, but they do know that we get more muscle fibers and our nervous system becomes more effective. The important thing is there are no shortcuts. You can't fast forward through your workout and become stronger. You have to feel the burn, as Jane Fonda used to say. Our spiritual, emotional beings are the same way. Sometimes we need to feel the pain in order to become stronger. Now, of course, no one signs up for the Strengthening Yourself Through Pain workshop. However, the Bible reminds us that there is indeed a connection between suffering and growing. Romans 5, verses 3 and 4. And we also have joy with our troubles, because we know these troubles produce patience. And patience produces character, and character produces hope. I was one of the first friends of my friend group to lose a parent. I was in my early 20s, but it still sucked. As I've gone through my life, I think I've had more compassion for those who've lost loved ones than I would have without my father's early death. Now, I definitely wish he was still around, even though he'd be 108. He would. But I developed an understanding that you don't need to say anything when someone loses a loved one. You just need to reach out. You need to show you care and be there, whatever that means for you. Having alcoholic parents helped me have a better understanding and more patience with those who are struggling with addiction. They aren't bad people. They are just struggling or hurting, and they deserve our patience and love. Even losing my front tooth and going through the dental implant process has been part of my history that's been valuable to others. I've talked to people who, like me, were distraught over having to have a toothless smile. When I've been able to share my experience through that process and people see that I can now smile without covering my mouth, they feel a lot better. You can tell. I love this quote by Cynthia Thurlow. Bad chapters can still create great stories. Wrong paths can still lead to right places. Failed dreams can still create successful people. Sometimes it takes losing yourself to find yourself. As much as this mama bear wants to help her cub with his grinning freeze, she knows that he will be a more stronger, more confident adult by figuring everything out on his own. He knows that I'm here for him for advice or even money if needed, but he needs to struggle and learn how to problem solve. My dad used to say that hard work builds character. At that time, I thought it meant hard work at school or homework or at a job. But thinking about his wise words now, I think he actually meant something different. I think he meant the hard things in life, the work we do to get through those hard things. That's the stuff that builds character. You see, we can't just fast forward through the tough parts. I really wish we could. But as we go through the tough parts in life, we are getting stronger and far more understanding and compassionate toward others. We are becoming better people who will impact the lives of others far differently than we would have before. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is known for her studies on death and dying. However, based on these profound words, she also knew a lot about living. The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found a way out of their deaths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep, loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. It was great to see all of you beautiful people here today. Tune in next Sunday for a virtual service when Nancy will tell us about staying in Our Lady. And then in 2 weeks, we will be right back here for Easter at the Prairie House with Back to Life. Have a great Sunday and go in peace. Amen.
Thanks for joining us for Entry Point Faith's online virtual service. If you'd like to join us in person, we meet every other week at Conner Prairie in Fishers, Indiana. For more information, please visit entrypointchurch.org.